True Story of Gina Hall, Video 9. Who is that girl we abducted? Let's go back and recap King's initial account of the night from his very first interview with Trooper Hall, before his handwritten deposition. King said it was around 1 a.m. when Steve advised him that he and Gina were going to the house and Steve wanted the key, so King followed them out to the car, gave him the key, and went back into the Marriott. King described Gina as wearing a white pantsuit with a purple bodysuit under it, using those exact words. Bodysuit, under it. Interesting choice of words. Maybe Trooper Hall just wrote it down wrong, because after all, from King's composed story, having just met Gina as they walked out into the dark parking lot, how could he know that Gina was wearing a full bodysuit, like a one-piece bathing suit under her pants? For complete accuracy, in King's later written deposition, he says he heard the description of the missing girl on the radio. He said, "I heard that a girl was missing, that she was last seen at the Marriott, was wearing a white jumpsuit, and that her car was found abandoned between Claytor Lake and Radford on the Hazel Hollow Road." So weeks later, white jumpsuit. But that would not have been the description the radio would have announced, because I gave the description to the radio, and I would have never described white pants and a white Wrangler jacket as a jumpsuit. What did he hear in that radio announcement which led to this statement? I knew then it was the girl Steve left with. To note, in King's handwritten report, he says it was 12:30 a.m., not 1 a.m., when Steve came up and asked him in private if he could have the lake house keys. And King said yes. The original radio announcement about Gina being missing before Monday afternoon would not have included the car, and I guess by Monday evening the announcement would have been updated with the abandoned car information, because Gina was still missing and the police swarmed that area off of Hazel Hollow Road by Monday evening, which I believe prompted what happened later, Monday night. A little known fact I'll share in a moment. When exactly did they learn who Gina Hall was, the girl I believe was abducted? Remember the ridiculous Sunday afternoon horseshoe picnic when Epperly was asked, "How'd you do with the girl last night?" Asked because King was the one who told that Epperly was the only one that got lucky. Epperly was asked, what was her name? And Epperly answered that he did not know her name, but that she was from Coburn. Fisher joined in because he heard Coburn, and he had seen Gina Hall at the Marriott, knowing her, and knowing that we were the Hall sisters from Coburn. So Fisher asked Epperly, was her last name Hall? And Epperly said, I don't know. So did Epperly even know the name of the girl he abducted when he took her? Let's see. It is interesting that the contents of mine and Gina's shared clutch wallet were found hidden off of Hazel Hollow Road. The contents were in a brush pile, stacked neatly, covered slightly with dirt. Placed there. I know because I was there with the search crew in 1980 and the officers when our contents were found. Virginia State Police Investigator Duffy testified to this in his court testimony. Neatly placed, covered slightly with dirt. And in that stack were both of our driver's licenses and several ID cards, like Gina's blood donor card, and all of my first graders' spring school pictures. Those contents found not at the same place where my stolen purse was found, two separate places, not one, and the contents from the clutch wallet that Gina and I shared with our ID information, seems likely whoever placed those IDs there knew a lot of information about us, but not enough. Let's see if we can determine when Epperly actually learned more than just the information from the ID cards. He learned her name, he learned her address, he might have even been able to learn her blood type. But what did he really know about Gina Hall? When Epperly was first questioned, he knew a lot. His story believable, that he and Gina connected on the dance floor and she agreed to go to a lake house with him, and he knew information about her and her family as if he had been in detailed conversation with her. So the authorities surmised from that point that she refused his sexual advances, and he lost his temper, and I guess now we could add ignited earlier by her dancing. Here are the facts, including something very few people know. Sunday night, almost 24 hours after I had last seen Gina, I finally reached my dad. He'd been gone all day Sunday. He decided he would just wait till Monday morning and drive up past Withville to the headquarters, state police headquarters, and file an official report because I told him no one was listening to me. Later in the night, I decided to borrow a car, and I went to the radio station. At first they said no, so I begged and begged them to please announce Gina as a missing person. And I believe it was the radio announcements on Monday morning and the activity around the car Monday afternoon and Monday evening that prompted this next move. A lesser-known fact from 1980. Epperly's and King's unannounced visit to Fisher's workplace. Late Monday night, according to Fisher and multiple reports. To note, King said Fisher was wrong and that it was Monday night, it was not Monday night, it was Tuesday. They're always off a day, the two of them. I believe Fisher, because there were reports around 11 p.m. Monday night in the report. And he got off at 12:30 a.m. So I guess in a way, the visit carried into the early first hours of Tuesday. No matter. The visit was prompted by Fisher's Sunday afternoon question posed to Epperly at the ridiculous horseshoe picnic. Was the girl a Hall? Fisher asking Epperly that question alerted Epperly that Fisher indeed did know the girl. The girl Epperly really knew nothing about, name, address, until that Monday night visit with Fisher at his workplace. A girl abducted and now dead. A girl who had named Steve to her sister. And so someone most likely overheard that when they made Gina call. Fisher said in his statement that he was scared at first, seeing only Epperly approach, but he felt relieved once he saw King was with him. Fisher said the visit was to learn everything he knew about Gina. Epperly asked Fisher if he knew anyone Gina ran around with. Fisher said he shared details about us and our family, like Daddy being an insurance agent. When Epperly gave police his first statement, Tuesday at 5 p.m., he knew detailed information about Gina. Yet earlier, at the horseshoe picnic, he only told that he knew she was from Coburn, not knowing that Fisher would connect the dots. I believe Epperly did not know the name of whom he had abducted at first, but he quickly figured out everything about Gina. The IDs and this workplace visit with Fisher gave him everything he needed to know. So what is the real truth behind Epperly's narrative shared with the police and substantiated by King? Epperly learned who Gina was from those IDs and Jan Fisher. And to emphasize, those IDs were hidden on the same side of Hazel Hollow Road, between the trestle and very near the muck place. The place I believe Gina may have drawn her last breath. The miracle place. The same place where the angels laid in the water in 2016. This place. Well, remember the lake house participants and my curiosity of exactly how their plans changed? We have accounts of a slowly driven Monte Carlo at 3 a.m. and a fast, recklessly driven Monte Carlo at 5 a.m. The 3 a.m. report of my Monte Carlo pulling out from the lake house, driving slowly in front of two fishermen who just had pulled up behind, headed home from up near at the dam. And the slow driving car aggravated them because here they were doubled up on a small motorcycle with a big catch, a big bass strapped onto their motorcycle, falling right behind the Monte Carlo that has that big CB radio on the back antenna. So naturally, they were anxious to get home, wanting to pass the slow-moving vehicle, but they could not. Finally, they say, after my Monte Carlo turned off onto Claytor Dam Road and onto Hazel Hollow Road, they scurried on along, not thinking anything about it, until the same car they had followed ended up on the news a few days later, abandoned on the Hazel Hollow Road. I believe Gina was in the trunk of my car on that trip, either dead or holding on to her last breath. And I believe Epperly removed her from the trunk of my car and placed her at that spot off of Hazel Hollow Road. And I don't believe that that blood in the trunk came from that trip. That place that I call the muck place, the picture on the front of my book. More on that later. So let's revisit King and Robinson's account from this part of the timeline. Epperly went back to the lake house to clean up, and in my opinion, we have to at least consider that maybe to also be intentionally seen by a witness, Robin Robinson, who maybe was retrieved by King after 3 a.m. for an alibi purpose, or maybe not. Maybe they did just wander in at 4 a.m. We will see. King said he left the Marriott at 1:30 a.m. and went to the Terrace Apartments where he met an ex-girlfriend, and they decided to go to the lake house, arriving at 4 a.m. Never a mention of what went on in the interim in that first interview by King of the three guys at the three girls' apartment. Later, King would state he looked out the window of the three girls' terrace view apartment and looked down and saw Robin's light on in her apartment, and he called her. But Robin tells it was about 3 a.m. or so when Bill came by the outside of her apartment window and asked her to go to the lake swimming. More contradictions. It was also never brought up anywhere until the trial that Robin was actually at the Marriott earlier that night. Around 4 a.m. is the time Epperly states Gina took him home. And according to King and Robinson, Epperly is at the lake house when they arrive at 4 a.m. Although in Robin's first phone call interview with Trooper Hall, Robin says she and Bill arrived between 3:30 a.m. and 4. But then in her later July interview, she said it was exactly 4 because she saw the clock when they walked in. I wonder, an influenced change in perspective? King and Robin arrive. King tells Robin beforehand that Steve Epperly is there with a girl, Gina Hall, naming her, according to Robin. They enter the house through the upper level, and according to Robin, King fiddling with the keys upon entry, keys that King said he had given to Epperly earlier in the night. His one and only set of keys to the lake house. Remember, the reason he gave in his statement for leaving the Marriott was to go to the car and get the key for Epperly, and that Gina left with Epperly willingly. He testified, one key. The 4 a.m. statements continue, so Robin states King fiddled with the keys to unlock the door. They enter the lake house, slamming the doors, making noise, and go over to the circular stairs and talk with Epperly, who is down in the rec room on the first level. They say they never hear or see Gina. King says he never saw Epperly. Only Robin looks down into the rec room through the circular stairway opening, sees Epperly coming from the direction of the utility room, telling police that was the one and only time she had ever seen Epperly in her life. She describes him not as tall as Bill. She tells the police Epperly was shirtless, wiping his shoulders with a blue towel. King or Robin do not go downstairs to see his friend. He and Robin go back out the upstairs level, not the direct route, but the long way down to the dock to swim. They say Epperly left about 10 to 15 minutes later, because Epperly tells that he went swimming and Gina would not. The assumption is that Robin just saw him drying off from the swim. Convenient picture being painted for Robin, who is either an alibi or not. Whether King was there or not, before 3 a.m. or after, Epperly was not alone at the lake house where he took Gina, no matter what their stories tell. Robin did not have to see him using that blue towel to know that it was the connecting piece of the violence committed against Gina there inside that lake house. And no matter who used it, no matter who saw it, who discarded it, it was still covered in proof of where it had been and what had been done with it. It is the connecting piece of evidence between Gina and the lake house, the blood, the rec room carpet fibers, hair similar to Gina's. One blue towel used in the cleaning up of that violence. When a person is a witness testifying in a trial, you can't become part of the courtroom audience. So my dad and I sat out in the hall of the courthouse, and we never really knew everything that transpired with other witnesses throughout the trial. After the trial, we went on with our life. Aside from going through all of the appeals and those trials. But after the first trial, we did discuss as a family the big picture of what transpired. But I never went back and read any of the court transcripts ever. Others' exact words until the journey. After becoming aware of the court testimony, especially King's testimony, and knowing my sister and knowing her character, I knew all I could do in my quest for truth was to compare the various statements, especially those initial earlier reports, the handwritten accounts, and compare those statements with answers given in court. And King's words stood out to me because we, the family, never believed Gina went willingly to be with this man. King's excuse given for leaving the Marriott and going out to the parking lot was to get the key to the lake house. His account of what he said transpired in the parking lot, uncharacteristic of my sister. I knew Gina, and I knew then and I know now. She would have never left the Marriott to be with anyone. So when I learned Robin said that King fiddled with keys upon entering the upstairs with the one and only set of keys, according to King, that he gave Epperly, and I read the report from the fisherman who, under the bright moonlight, saw King and Epperly both enter that home from the lower level through the sliding glass doors that had no key, so open. And then I compared this with his exact words given in court testimony. I had my answer. And now we can add another validating key moment when King called me in 2019 talking about Epperly, always knowing where that spare key was kept, under the center block by the entry door, and saying to himself, why would I have said that I went outside to the parking lot to get Epperly the key? Delana, that makes no sense. Well, extra key or only key, whatever. The key is the key to what happened to Gina Hall after she left the Marriott. to come home. In early 2018, I sat in the library in Richmond for days, listening to the recordings of my dad's voice. My voice, that little 21, 22-year-old, whatever I was then, I'm 61 now, listening to that voice. I purchased copies, the entire trial recordings, including King's words, to the best of my knowledge. It was always easy for me to know the truth about what really happened at the Marriott, because I began with a foundation of truth that I always knew. What they said Gina did would never have happened. So any thoughts or theories I contemplated began with that truth. In 1980, we knew Gina and her character, and we knew the Marriott story was composed by her killer to create an alibi. We did not know the rest. Epperly's actions and words became his own detriment. He wrote his own story. Epperly's confidence and arrogance apparent even in the original photo taken of him when he first went into the police station. Smug. Very smug. Most likely because of this conversation. We can never forget Bill Cranwell testifying last and telling that Epperly came to him early that first week, asking him to ask his attorney brother, "What can they do to me if they do not find the body?" before we even knew about the multitude of circumstantial evidence inside the lake house. Some might question that Cranwell's story changed throughout the summer because of his friendship with my dad. No. Cranwell told the police about Epperly's visit early in an early police report, and included in those reports was also who came to Mr. Cranwell's house with Epperly: Tom Hardy and Benny Martin. Hardy and Cranwell were interviewed extensively, and I learned from those 1980 reports that Cranwell told the police that Epperly owed him some money for some trouble he'd gotten into. And Hardy told the police that he had provided Epperly with money for the defense attorneys in Epperly's 1976 rape cases. Many believe the Cadillac, seen by the deputy making his rounds early Sunday morning that was parked by the abandoned Monte Carlo, belonged to Hardy. The timing of that would most likely point to a lake house participant. Epperly was associated to some well-known criminal types as early as 1976. DeHart would become an FBI informant before he was murdered. And DeHart and Tom Hardy, he had enough troubles of his own. Both were connected to each other and to Epperly. And there are others even more concerning than just these criminals. These Epperly-associated friends' stories came to light as the decades of the 80s continued. But none came close to the power of the man that I believe is at the top of this hierarchy. There are so many possibilities as to who might have actually been at that lake house. But it is most definitely, beyond a doubt, was not just Epperly and Gina. And they did not know her name. So again, what happened at the lake house between midnight and 3 a.m.? Why was it so important to keep a lake house guest list a secret? Who was there, to the best of your knowledge? Who are the pawns and who are the kings in this chess game? Are the pawns just being moved about on the board? Was Epperly the only king on this chess game? What role do others play? Was there a rook, a bishop, a knight who tried to do what was right and ended up at the bottom of a lake? Really? Back to a simple question: who was there? Maybe we can begin to shed some light on a bigger picture to consider in the next video.